Hello, readers, and thank you for joining me for today's book. Today's book is called The Day You Begin. The author's name is Jacqueline Woodson, and the illustrator's name is Rafael Lopez. So, the genre of The Day You Begin is fiction, and we've talked a lot about what fiction means, and we know that a fiction book is when an author's telling a story from their own heart and brain, and that you as a reader are hearing that story and listening to it. Usually it has characters and a setting, maybe there's a problem that gets solved, or you can use the somebody wanted but so then to help you retell the story. So we know all of those things about fiction stories. One thing that we've also been talking about recently is this idea that authors have a purpose or a reason why they choose to tell the story they tell from their heart and brain. Because authors could write about anything, but they choose the story from their heart and brain because they have a purpose. There's something they want to do when they tell that story. They want their reader to feel certain things or to think about certain things. So as we're reading The Day You Begin today, think about what might Jacqueline Woodson's purpose be? What might she be wanting you to feel as you read this book, and why? Why is she choosing to tell this story from her heart and brain when as an author she could choose to tell any story? Why this story? What's her purpose, and how does she want you to feel as you read? So think about that as we're reading. What is this book making you feel in your heart and brain, and how does it connect to the story? So, let's begin. The Day You Begin by Jacqueline Woodson and Rafael Lopez. I'm going to go ahead and chuck it in on the front cover, and I'm going to notice some things about the main character here. Now, I've read this book before, so I know some of the characters' identities. I know her gender identity because the author uses the word she and her, which tells us her gender identity is a girl. I know her age identity as a kid because she's talking about going to school for the first time in a new class. Her race identity, the author doesn't use a word that tells me. She doesn't tell us how this character identifies, but I do notice that her melanin is busy, and the author's going to talk a little bit about that in the first couple of pages. I also want you to know that although this is their main character, there's lots of other characters in the book as well from her class that you're going to meet, and their identities are important too because the author's going to name a lot of them as we read. So here we go. The Day You Begin by Jacqueline Woodson and Rafael Lopez. There will be times when you walk into a room and no one there is quite like you. Maybe it will be your skin, your clothes, or the curl of your hair. Now, I hear the author talking about the characters' identities, how she doesn't see anyone else in her class who looks like her. And the illustrator is showing us, with the way her eyes are shaped and where her eyebrows are in her mouth, that makes her feel worried in the red. There will be times when no one understands the way that words curl from your mouth, the beautiful language of the country you left behind. My name is Rigoberto. We just moved here from Venezuela. And because they don't understand, the classroom will fill with laughter until the teacher quiets everyone. I hear the author talking about another character named Rigoberto and his language identity. He's having a similar problem to the other character, where no one else has the same language identity that he does. Rigoberto from Venezuela. Your teacher says it so soft and beautifully that your name and homeland sound like flowers blooming the first bright notes of a song. Wow, I noticed that when the teacher honored his story and his identity, it made him feel safer and more loved, and I can see that in his face. I wonder if that would work for the other kids who are feeling like they don't connect to other people in their class. There will be times when the words don't come. Your own voice, once huge, now smaller, when the teacher asks, "What did you do last summer? Tell the class your story." "We went to France," Shayla says. "These shells came from a beach in Maine." A boy named Jonathan holds out a jar filled with shells so tiny and fragile, they look like they'll turn to dust in your own untraveled hands. "My whole family went to India, Spain, South Carolina." Each souvenir a small triumph of a journey. Your classmates' travels going on and on. And as you stand in front of that room, you can only remember how the heat waved as it lifted off the curb, and your days spent at home caring for your little sister, who made you laugh out loud and hugged you hard at nap time. You can only remember the books you kept on reading long after she had fallen to sleep. And in that room, where no one else is quite like you, you'll look down at your own empty hands and wonder, what good are books when other students were flying and sailing and going somewhere? I hear the girl talking about her family and class identities. Her family didn't have access to the money and resources to travel, so she read a lot and took care of her sister. And in class, it's making her think that those things aren't as good as what her classmates did to travel. There will be times when the lunch your mother packed for you is strange or too unfamiliar for others to love as you do. When even your own friend, Naja, will wrinkle her nose and say, "What's in there anyway?" And you'll wonder how she doesn't see the rice beneath the meat and kimchi. You'll wonder why she doesn't remember that rice is the most popular food in the world. Kimchi is a kind of food that's made from cabbage, and it's often eaten by people whose ancestors came from Korea. There will be times when the climbing bars are too high. The run is too fast and far. The game isn't one that your body can ever really play. I don't want him on our team. You have to watch. Maybe you can have a turn later. There will be times when the world feels like a place that you're standing all the way outside of. And all that stands beside you is your own brave self, steady as steel and ready, even though you don't know yet what you're ready for. There will be times when you walk into a room and no one there is quite like you, until the day you begin to share your stories. My name is Angelina, and I spent my whole summer with my little sister. You tell the class, your voice stronger than it was a minute ago. We read books and told stories, and even though we were right on our block the whole time, those stories made it feel like we got to go everywhere. Wow, I noticed that when Angelina shared the stories of her summer, her face turned proud. I wonder what her classmates will say now that she's decided to share her story and that her story is different than lots of theirs. Your name is like my sister's name, Rigoberto says. Her name is Angelina too. All at once, in the room where no one else is quite like you, the world opens up a little wider to make some space for you. This is the day you begin. The day you begin to find the places inside your laughter and your lunches, your books, your travel, and your stories, where every new friend has something a little like you, and something else fabulously not quite like you at all. There's one final page, friends, that's an illustration only, no words. Know what words you might use to describe what's happening in this illustration. So the good reader question for this book today is, how did Angelina make friends? How did Angelina end up connecting to people? How did she do that? Think about that for a minute, knowing that you will use evidence to support your answer. Angelina made friends, and I know that because the author wrote or the illustrator drew. Think about that. How did Angelina connect with her classmates? If you're able, pause this video and have a good reader conversation with yourself or someone in your home about how Angelina connected to people in her class, using evidence from the book to support your answer. I know for me, I think Angelina made friends by sharing her story and telling a little bit about herself, even though at first that felt scary or hard to do. And I know that because it was after she shared her story, right after that happened, her classmate Rigoberto made a connection with her by noticing that she had the same name as his sister, and that made her feel connected to him. I know that when the author wrote, "The world opened up to make space for you," I know that those words mean that she felt connected to Rigoberto and perhaps to other people in her class who may have also been able to make connections with her stories. It turns out that, yes, she had different things about herself and her classmates, but also they had some things that connected them together, and it was their differences that helped them understand each other as well. So that's my answer to the good reader question. I'm curious what yours is. I hope you're able to find a way to share it with someone. After that, you have two choices. You have a menu of two choices to do with the book the day you begin. And here they are. I'm going to take you through both of them. You can do one today and one another day. You can do both in a day. Any of those choices are fine. I'm also going to say that for both of the things on this menu, it would be okay to answer it with words or to write it. Either one of those things would be a just fine way to use your good reader brain and to do the items from this menu. So here's the first thing you can do to make your reading brain stronger with this book. You can make read it with me if you'd like, ready, set, read, text to self connection, or sometimes as we call, text to self connection. So that would sound like thinking about something that happened in this book and connecting it to your own life. So with words, it might sound like, this made me think of, or this book makes me think of, or when this happened to Angelina, it was kind of like this one time that this thing happened to me. That is what a text to self connection would sound like, which you can say with words or write. And then the other thing you can do that will make your reading brain stronger is what we talked about before the book, which is, you can read it with me if you'd like, ready, set, read, author's purpose. So the second thing is to think about, what do you think the author's purpose was in writing this book? If the author was Jacqueline Woodson, why did she tell this story from her heart and brain? What did she want the reader to think and to feel? Okay, so answering the author's purpose question might sound like, the author wanted me to feel something because something. Okay, so you can either say that with words or write it. And I gave you two choices. Did Jacqueline Woodson want you to feel lonely? Did Jacqueline Woodson want you to feel loving? Which choice makes more sense, might match the author's purpose? And then you can answer with, the author wanted me to feel one of those words because, and then the reason why you think that. So those are two things you can do with this book that will make your reading brain stronger.